Why does Santa have trouble spelling? Because he thinks the alphabet has no L. Ho ho ho! Now I have a machine gun. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of Horrible. And today we are going to be talking about Violent Night. Saw this the other day. But before we start, a Christmas joke. Did you hear about the dyslexic Satanist? He sold his soul to Santa. Yeah, I'm going to be peppering this quick review with a few Christmas jokes, because why not? We're in the spirit. I've got my glittery Santa hat on today, and for the lead up to Christmas now, just a couple of days away, just a few more sleeps until Christmas. We'll be doing a few Christmas themed games, a few Christmas themed reviews. So yeah, saw Violent Night the other day. Was kind of on the fence about this one. And the reason why I was on the fence is because they seem to have jam-packed a lot of different thematic elements of different films into this one. Now, I'm not going to spoil Violent Night for you because it's a new film. Any spoilers that I do will be from old films that you may have seen, sort of thing. I'm not gonna spoil films that are relatively new. So there's a spoiler-free review. However, having said that, what I will be doing is talking about a few of the themes, a few caveats of the film itself that you may want to check out for yourself. But first off, let's just get the synopsis out of the way. When a team of mercenaries breaks into a wealthy family compound on Christmas Eve, taking everyone inside hostage, the team isn't prepared for a surprise combatant, Santa Claus, played by David Harbour. He's on the grounds and he's about to show why this Nick is no saint. David Harbour plays Santa Claus, Saint Nick, a boozy and disillusioned version. We open on the film when he's sat in a pub in Bristol and he's just like, he's had enough. He thinks that kids just get cash for Christmas these days or play video games too much. So he's pretty disillusioned. He's pretty apathetic, and he's playing to type with the kind of Hopper character from Stranger Things in this. A kind of town mall Santa comes along, is like finishes shift and is sitting there going like, I trust me, man, I know how it is. So it's a puke gag at the very beginning, and this is the kind of thing that set a little alarm bells ringing in my mind, because I think there's an American style of humor to Violent Night that is a little jarring to me personally. There were a lot of things that I liked about this film, but there was a lot of things that I didn't like about this film. We'll get into that very shortly. The first start of the film is we're introduced to the Lightstone family and their prestigious mansion. So what I was saying earlier about a lot of things being crammed into one, personally for what I felt, like you have Succession, you have Die Hard, you have Home Alone, and you have John Wick. Now, when you say those four things aloud and, out, it doesn't seem like four things that could ever be encompassed together. However, this is the type of film that Violent Night is. And I'll explain that as much as I can, essentially. So you have this prestigious family called the Lightstone family. And they are a dysfunctional group that have gathered for the holiday. You're introduced to family man Jason, played by Alex Hassel, and his estranged wife Linda, played by Alexis Louder. They've arrived with their kind of wide-eyed Kevin McAllister style, daughter, Trudy. Then you have Jason's self-absorbed sister Alva, played by Edie Patterson, and she's brought along her wannabe influencer son Bertrude, played by Alexander Elliott, and her new boyfriend, a sort of Steven Seagal type style C-list movie star, Morgan Steele. And what they're basically all doing is trying to appease to the matriarch of the family, Gertrude, played by Beverly D'Angelo. So she's like the Brian Cox figure of this family. They all want to appease her. They all want to shower her with platitudes and, know that she's the one. And it is very much like Succession in this respect. She holds all the wealth. She holds all the cards. And even Jason, like, you do get the sense at the very beginning that he is this kind of put upon, guy who, he's estranged now from his wife and his daughter to a certain extent. He's bringing her along to this expansive mansion just for, the Christmas holidays, because that's tradition. That's what they do in the Lightstone family. What do you get if you deep fry Santa Claus? You get a crisp Kringle. Then you have this bunch of mercenaries led by John Leguizamo, who calls himself Scrooge. But he's not really given a name else than his code name. They're all you can see, basically he's enveloped himself into the family. You can see his team that are already there. This is where the die-hard element comes into this, because the team have instilled themselves in this mansion. There's one part where one of the family members comes up to this woman and she's serving them, and she clearly doesn't know how to serve properly, or in the kind of royalty type way of serving people of certain wealth. This all comes about, they start taking over, and that's essentially where I'm going to go without going into spoiler territory. David Harbour's Santa Claus character, is doing his rounds of the night. He comes down, he gets embroiled in this mercenary takeover. A lot of the jokes didn't hit well, and this was my problem with the film. They're aggressively unfunny because the script isn't that great. Any attempts at humor are either done in a kind of very way, which if you're a fan of that sort of slapstick, that's fine. But then they kind of merge it with the John Wick aspect, where Santa Claus at certain points then sort of uses an innocuous candy cane, sucks on it a little bit, and it becomes like a dagger, and the violence just erupts from nowhere. And it's one of those kind of things where I was thinking to myself, I'm not entirely sure what the target demographic of this movie is. Teenagers, obviously, people that have seen John Wick, but John Wick in itself has its own lore. It has its own kind of mythos. This is Santa Claus, and yeah, of course, I'm taking it with a pinch of salt. Well, I'm not trying to be a prude here. I'm not trying to sound like a prude, but when you have this kind of bright, wide-eyed girl who believes in Santa, has this Kevin McAllister Home Alone feel, you kind of think to yourself, okay, that's one way they're going, where she's setting traps later on. There's one sequence, for example, that I actually did think was very funny. She's hiding in the attic. She's setting all these traps, very a la Home Alone. But then you have these sequences where Santa Claus is pushing a guy out of a window. He's being impaled on stuff. He's going full blast with his sledgehammer. What do you call a kid that doesn't believe in Santa? A rebel without a clause. There's even a scene where a lawnmower comes into effect, and you just have these guys eviscerated in a bloody kind of CGI blood kind of way. I just didn't really know who this was aimed at, because I think if you're aiming it at a teen audience, I think maybe I'm just showing my age here. Maybe I'm just showing, everyone knows Home Alone. Everyone knows that it's a heartfelt family comedy, but also at the same time there are these elements of Nobody and John Wick and Atomic Blonde. So I kind of felt there was a bit of a jagged edge of, maybe it's my British sensibilities, I don't know. But there was a limit of, okay, this has gone from not that funny script to John Wick. My point being is, I think if you start off straight away off the bat being like John Wick, Santa is John Wick, okay, fine. There's an element as well where we find out that Santa had a bit of a kind of Viking past. I don't think this is more true in the sense that if you've read Claus by Grant Morrison, the comic book version, if you read that comic, which you should because it's really good, it kind of gives you the backstory of Santa Claus or Claus and the different names of like Viking mythology. Really good. It's really interesting. And they seem to touch upon this, but there's just one flashback segment where we see David Harbour's character in this kind of Viking suit. He has this, I think he calls it, Skull Crusher or Skull Splitter or something like this. He's always been adorned with this kind of sledgehammer type of thing. You feel like he's lost his way. This bright-eyed Kevin McAllister style Home Alone person brings him back to his senses. And there are some good fight sequences in this as well. There's one in particular where it's like down in the pool room. There's a few where, and he gets beaten up but it's one of those things as well where you've seen it in Atomic Blonde, you've seen it in John Wick. These characters aren't, invulnerable. They're not immortal. They get beaten up. Like Santa Claus in this film gets beaten up a lot. And yeah, I'm going to try something now where I'm going to look at some of Rotten Tomatoes reviews and just kind of sort of say, oh, okay, why don't you ever see Santa at the hospital? Because he has private elf care. David Harbour makes a particularly good, cranky, butt-kicking Santa in a movie that offers the sort of shared experience that should bring theatres some much-needed cheer. Yeah, sure. Yeah, he's cranky. He is butt-kicking, but I mean, it's much like, as I said before, with Hopper in Stranger Things. In a Santa flick where old Saint Nick is a rough and tumble action hero, imagine Die Hard meets John Wick meets Home Alone. That's pretty much what I said there. It's a lot of fun and quite over the top and bloody, but in a strange way, a little endearing at times too. Now, the endearing at times, I think, comes from the wide-eyed Trudy character. I wouldn't say too endearing. Let's see some... Hang on here. Let's see some... with Violent Night, we are promised the deranged Santa meets Die Hard flick Shaun holiday schmaltz. Instead, the action comedy, just another soppy movie about Christmas spirit. I mean, I would agree with that, to be honest. Let's find another one. One of those bad movies that keeps piling on things that make it worse as it goes on. This could be alluding to the fact of as I said, like you're putting too much into a blender, maybe. As a chef, would you put too many ingredients into the pot? I could not help but visit the theatre for this Christmas movie, which features what ought to be fun, irreverent concept like Bad Santa. Unfortunately, the mixed comedy, sentimentality, and violence doesn't work very well this time around. Yeah, I did also get the fact that's probably the fifth element or ingredient that I forgot to kind of mention earlier. There is a Bad Santa vibe going on here with David Harbour's character in Bad Santa, where Billy Bob Thornton plays Santa, a Christmas grotto, Santa. They do try to get this vibe, but it's Santa, and there's always this part where he's like going back to like the nice and naughty list as well, so it doesn't really work. For all its devil-may-care mishmash of tropes and bludgeoning mayhem, Walocker's Jape is not quite up to scratch as a future Christmas nasty classic. And yeah, by the way, the director of this made Dead Snow earlier, a very good film about zombies in the snow, Nazi zombies in the snow. If you haven't seen it, check it out. But I do agree with a lot of these sentiments here. There's a brilliant sequence that reimagines what would have really happened to the bad guys in Home Alone had the traps been real, but the rest is just pointless, violent, and unlikable characters from Santa to Scrooge. That is a good point, actually. Apart from Santa, apart from Trudy, everyone in this is really unlikable. The mercenaries obviously don't get given enough screen time apart from John Leguizamo's Scrooge character, but even he is He has a little backstory, but it's very thin. Yeah, there's meant to be this theme between the father and the mother, and how, you know, this Christmas romp will bring them together. But even they are, yeah, I'd have to agree with that. The actual characters in this are really paper thin. There's not really any kind of three-dimensional stuff going on at all here. Essentially, like, if you're in the mood for a bit of a John Wick Santa, then Violent Night is good for you. Yeah, if I gave this something out of 10, it would probably be a 5, possibly a 6. I could faff on more about this, but this was meant to be a quick review, and yeah, it's not really going that way. I sometimes get into this kind of state where I start remembering things, and that just kind of piles me on, sort of thing. So I do apologize, but yeah, if you're in the mood for a John Wick, Home Alone, Die Hard, Succession vibe, this is perfect for you. For anything else, maybe just check out one or the other. I think this is trying to jam pack too many tropes into one. It succeeds in some areas, it fails miserably in other areas. But yeah, that's Violent Night. Well, I hope you enjoyed this, and we've got a few more days until Christmas now, so you know, one more joke before we leave. What did Santa name his pet frog? Mistletoe. I can't do this anymore. Anyways, if you like what you saw, please like and subscribe, and I will see you on the next horrible video. Thanks, bye.